Today, people around the world are commemorating one of the darkest chapters in human history as part of International Holocaust Remembrance Day. Every year on January 27th, Jews and non-Jews pay tribute to those murdered by the Nazis, honor the survivors, and teach the important lessons of the Shoah. Sadly, much of the world remains ignorant of the Holocaust, which resulted in the murder of 1/3 of the Jewish people, along with countless members of other minorities. In 2005, to raise awareness, the United Nations chose this date for International Holocaust Remembrance Day, as it marks the anniversary of the liberation in 1945 of the largest, most notorious Nazi extermination camp, Auschwitz-Birkenau. Emblematic of the evil of the Holocaust, it's where the Nazis killed more than 1.1 million people, 90% of them Jews, from all over Europe. On this solemn day of commemoration, the UN urges member states to honor the 6 million Jews who perished in the Holocaust and millions of other victims of Nazi persecution. It's also a day to support the development of educational programs about the Holocaust to help prevent future genocides. Today, exactly 77 years after Auschwitz was liberated, Canada and other countries are facing an alarming resurgence in antisemitism, along with a worrying increase in Holocaust denial, distortion, and trivialization. All the more reason to commemorate the Shoah and listen to what the diminishing number of survivors have to say, so we can carry on the lessons of the past for future generations. The Holocaust must forever be a warning to all people of the danger of hatred, bigotry, racism, and prejudice.
Good evening. I'm Michael Levitt, and it's my honor to welcome you to this special commemoration of International Holocaust Remembrance Day. Ever since 2005, when the United Nations designated January 27th as the annual recognition of the 6 million Jewish victims of the Holocaust and millions of other victims of Nazism, it has had a significant place on our calendar. But in many ways, as an organization devoted to Holocaust education and paying tribute to Holocaust survivors, remembrance of this terribly dark chapter is part of our reality every single day. And of course, our organization is named after the late Simon Wiesenthal, a Holocaust survivor whose decades-long pursuit of justice on behalf of all victims is a legacy we're proud to uphold. The Jewish community in Canada is blessed to have a number of organizations who do such exemplary work, teaching the lessons of the Holocaust, honoring survivors, and preserving the memory of those who perished. Like FSWC, the Canadian Society for Yad Vashem, the Sarah and Chaim Neuberger Holocaust Education Center, and the Azrieli Foundation all play a vital role in this field, and we're honored to have them participate with us as co-sponsors this evening. As I've often said, as a community, we're stronger together, and this evening is a testament to just that. Holocaust survivors have been a constant source of inspiration for the Jewish community and many other Canadians. With their numbers sadly diminishing, we're incredibly grateful that so many of their children and grandchildren are strongly committed to staying true to the legacy of their parents and grandparents. Engaging with them gives us enormous satisfaction. Against the backdrop of difficult times for our people, we gather here together this evening, not simply in an act of remembrance, but also in a show of resilience and solidarity, reaffirming our community's strength and fortitude. One of the highlights for me in this evening's program is the participation of 4 members of our community who just received the country's highest civilian honor, the Order of Canada. It gives me great pleasure to extend a warm mazel tov to Holocaust survivors Max Eisen, Lipszyc, and Eva Olsson on being recognized for their dedication to Holocaust education, and of course to Rabbi Baruch Frydman-Kohl for his leadership of Beth Tzedek congregation and his commitment to interfaith dialogue. As we gather here to honor and commemorate those murdered in the Holocaust and pay tribute to the legacy of those who survived, like Max, Rose, and Eva, it's deeply troubling that as the years roll on and the voices of survivors become fewer and fewer, the voices of those who deny, distort, and trivialize the tragedy of the Shoah are becoming louder and greater in number. So much so that just last week, the United Nations approved a resolution sponsored by Israel and co-sponsored by Canada, among other countries, condemning any such denial of the Holocaust. How sad that such a resolution was even necessary. Before passing the floor to Prime Minister Trudeau, I want to thank our community partners that have joined us this evening, including many synagogues and other organizations from across the country. Please see the full list at the conclusion of our program. We hope you find this commemoration as meaningful as it was for us in preparing it. Thank you for being with us here this evening.
Hello everyone, bonjour à tous. Thank you for having me at today's event to mark International Holocaust Remembrance Day. I'd like to begin by acknowledging and congratulating 3 Holocaust survivors, Max Eisen, Rose Lipszyc, and Eva Olsson, as well as Rabbi Baruch Frydman-Kohl on their appointments to the Order of Canada. From advancing Holocaust education to promoting interfaith dialogue, you've each worked to build a more inclusive Canada, and I'm grateful that you've joined us for this important and timely event. This is a moment to reflect on the atrocities that took place during one of the darkest periods in human history. It's also a time to remember the past and preserve history, to remember the stories that children and grandchildren heard at the Shabbat table, to remember the pain and suffering of generations lost and family histories unknown, and to remember the testimonies of Holocaust survivors. Les histoires des survivants doivent être racontées et chacun de nous doit les entendre. Sinon, les leçons de l'Holocauste risquent de tomber dans l'oubli. Les événements comme celui d'aujourd'hui aident à nous souvenir de ces histoires. Unfortunately, we've seen a frightening rise in hate-motivated crimes against the Jewish community. And on January 15th, Jewish communities around the world watched in horror at the evolving hostage situation at Congregation Beth Israel in Texas. I was relieved that the rabbi and all congregants were brought to safety and were unharmed, but it serves as a painful reminder that anti-Semitism continues to exist in our society. It's unacceptable, and we must confront it wherever and whenever it appears. Personne ne devrait avoir peur d'exprimer son identité juive ou de pratiquer sa religion. Nous savons que l'antisémitisme est un problème qui n'appartient pas seulement à la communauté juive, c'est un problème qui nous concerne tous. Avec le leadership d'Irwin Cotler, envoyé spécial du Canada pour la préservation de la mémoire de l'Holocauste et la lutte contre l'antisémitisme, on va continuer de s'y attaquer ensemble. We all must speak up when we see hatred online, in our communities, or wherever it exists. And we must speak loudly and clearly when we say, never again. Toda Rabbah.
I'm honored to be speaking to you on this International Holocaust Remembrance Day. I would first like to recognize the tireless work in Holocaust education and fighting hatred and anti-Semitism of the Canadian Friends of the Simon Wiesenthal Center, and thank them for hosting this event. I also particularly want to greet and acknowledge the Holocaust survivors who are with us today, Mr. Eisen, Mrs. Lipszyc, and Mrs. Olsson. Your commitment and dedication to sharing your lived experiences and the terror that you lived through with future generations is deeply inspiring. In my role as Ambassador of Israel to Canada, I have many priorities in terms of strengthening the cooperation between our great nations. At the top of this list, I see cooperation with government, community, and grassroots organizations that promote Holocaust education, groups that fight the lies of Holocaust denial and distortion, and combat contemporary anti-Semitism that we still see being propagated today. This event and many others like this are an important and necessary part in our cooperation. International Holocaust Remembrance Day, an initiative put forth to the United Nations by the State of Israel, challenges the countries of the world to make the time to remember, reflect, and mourn the horrors of the Holocaust. For you, the survivors, and for us, your children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, Holocaust remembrance is something that takes place every day. It is my belief that through Holocaust education comes the understanding of what it means to say never again. We must teach Jewish and non-Jewish youth and adults alike about the horrific realities perpetrated by Nazi Germany that wiped out not only 6 million Jews, a third of our people, but millions of other minorities, including disabled people, gay people, Roma people, and more. We all know that the hatred of Jews did not end with the Allies' victory over the Nazis. That is why today and every day, we join survivors in remembering, learning, and making sure that never again means never again. Holocaust education and awareness, as well as working definitions like the IRA definition of anti-Semitism, are the tools we have so that our generation and future generations can recognize hate and discrimination when they see it. They see it on the internet or on social media, call it out for what it is, and truly uphold never again. Never again to singling out Jews be based on faith, religion, race, or the nation state, and never again to anti-Semitism going unchecked. Thank you very much.
Today, we honor the memory of the 6 million victims who were brutally murdered by the Nazi regime during the Holocaust. On the 77th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz, we stand shoulder to shoulder with the survivors of these atrocities end with the Jewish people around the world in our pledge to never forget such evils. The Holocaust continues to be one of the darkest eras in history and is a solemn reminder of the importance of unwavering in our commitment to stand up against anti-Semitism, hatred, and bigotry in all its forms. Our strength as a province comes from our diversity. Let's continue working together to build a better, safer, and more inclusive Ontario. And I speak for all Ontarians when I say never again.
Hello, Mayor John Tory here. Today we recognize International Holocaust Remembrance Day, falling on the exact day in 1945 when the Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camps were liberated. But not before 6 million Jewish victims and many others were murdered in the Holocaust during the Second World War. We will and we must never forget this atrocity. While years have passed, we must remember the terrible toll of the Holocaust on so many people across the world and on their survivors. These horrific acts represented one of history's most searing examples of hatred and anti-Semitism, discrimination, inhumanity, genocide. It's incumbent on us to continue our vigilance against this kind of evil so that it never takes root again. Not only that it never happens again, but so that it never takes root again. Today, we not only honor the victims of the Holocaust and recognize the lasting scars that resulted from it, but pledge to continue informing ourselves and educating future generations. I want to thank the survivors of this tragedy for bravely sharing their stories so that we know what happened and how it came about, where those roots arose. And it gives us all the opportunity to work together to make sure that this shameful part of the world's history is never repeated anywhere to anybody. This day must also serve to renew our collective commitment to standing against anti-Semitism in all of its forms and all the places where it happens. Our Toronto and Canadian value system absolutely rejects this and any other hatred, the tragedy and violence of the Holocaust, and so let us take today to remember and to honor those who perished and those who survived by rejecting, absolutely rejecting, this persistent behavior wherever and whenever it comes to pass. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ashley Rosenberg, and I am one of the co-chairs of Generation Now. It is my honor to introduce you to three incredible human beings and Holocaust survivors who just last month were appointed as members of the Order of Canada. We are so pleased that their contribution to Canadian society has been recognized. Max Eisen was born in 1929 in Czechoslovakia and was deported to Auschwitz in the spring of 1944. Rose Lipszyc was born in 1929 in Lublin, Poland. She survived the war under a false identity, posing as a teenage Polish child worker in Germany. And Dr. Eva Olsson was born in Hungary in 1924. She survived several extermination camps, including Auschwitz and Bergen-Belsen. On this International Holocaust Remembrance Day, it is an honor to have these three share their story with you and their message for the future.
I'm Max Eisen. I was born March the 15th, 1929 in Czechoslovakia.
I was born in Hungary in a city called Szatmár.
My name is Rose Lipszyc. I was born in 1929 and I come from the city of Lublin, which I lived on Grodzka 30, which has become now a famous hotel. When the war broke out, I was 10 years old, and that finished my formal education. In 1941, we had left to a small town because they took our home away.
March the 19th, 1944, we were occupied, and they created a ghetto. My family didn't have money. We slept on the floor. We didn't have enough beds. We didn't have hydro. We didn't have indoor plumbing, but we were a family.
In October 1942, they liquidated this area where they took my father away, and they started walking us toward the train station. And on the road, my mother realized that that's the conclusion she came to, that we're going to our death. She said she doesn't believe the whole world is gone mad. There must be somebody that's going to help me. And if I'll survive, so will she. and she pushed me off the road. And I wound up running till I came to a village that I knew, a Polish family by the name of Stanisław Jabłoński. And I walked into his place, and he opened the door and he took me in. I met up with my aunt, and I became Helena Jabłońska, and she became Lodzia Jabłońska. And we wound up in Germany, working under assumed name.
We were deported in 1944 from Hungary to Auschwitz. My father, uncle, and I, we were selected for slave labor. My mother, with my two younger brothers and my baby sister, my grandfather, grandmother, and my aunt were sent from this platform. They said that they're going to take a shower. My mother was truly my guardian angel. There were no goodbyes said. I think of my mother, how she must have tried to save her children in this terrible place. Imagine a gas chamber with 2,000 people dying.
And that's where 13 members of my family died in the gas chamber. The youngest, Frado, she was not quite 17, survived with me. We were sent to the right to work as slave laborer eventually.
My father and uncle and I, we were together for 2 months in Auschwitz. They were selected out in July of 1944 for medical experiments, never saw them again.
The Russian forces were coming closer. They took us to Bergen-Belsen, where Anne Frank and her sister Margot died. Many of them were skeletons, covered with lice. Dysentery was an epidemic, nothing to eat or drink. And I also got very sick there, typhoid fever. And I kept saying, I cannot die here.
I was liberated in 1945 on May the 6th by an American tank unit.
I was liberated in 1945 from the English.
Small miracles out of the ashes. We were liberated by the British and Canadian forces that had already freed Holland.
There were 14 grandchildren. I'm the only one that survived. I lost my father, my mother, my older brother, Easy, and my younger brother, Henyek, which I adored with a passion. And I remember them all. Their faces live with me through the years. It still hurts. I still wake up in the middle of the night once in a while and run and hide. I guess it never goes away.
April the 13th, 1951, we arrived in Halifax, Nova Scotia. We came as tourists for 6 months, but my husband loved Canada and we became Canadians.
In 1949, I arrived in Canada. I came on a ship called Samaria. I remember at night, the train is going and I could see lights in homes. And I kept thinking where my next home is going to be.
From Halifax to Toronto was a long ride. And the country, oh my God, although it was snowed in, it was so beautiful and so big.
I was very fortunate that I was a ward of the Jewish Family and Child Service, and my life started in this wonderful country. I'll be forever grateful to the Canadian government that gave me an opportunity to start a new life, a new family.
From the first moment, I just felt that it allowed me to grow and develop, and it allowed me to have my children here in peace and tranquility.
Here in this beautiful country, we can achieve things, we can do things.
So I'm very, very grateful to this country, especially now that they honored me with the Order of Canada, which is a privilege.
I am absolutely honored, as a saying, my cup runneth over, to be honored by the government, by the people of Canada with this honor. I'm more empowered to keep on going. I feel that I have a lot more work to do.
To receive this honor at this age, it's amazing. I'm truly, truly grateful. And the Governor General for the beautiful letter she wrote to me, and the reason why I'm getting it, of course, it's because of the work I'm doing.
At first, when they called me, I thought somebody's making a joke over me. But I actually cried that day. And I don't cry very often anymore. but I really cried. I couldn't believe it. It was just such an honor.
If you do good in your life, you make choices to do good. Evil man tap.
I accept it with humility and gratitude.
Police are still working a hostage situation. It's happening right now at the Congregation Beth Israel.
And here we are today, trying to deal with a whole new anti-Semitism or hatred against Jews. And for me, as a survivor, it is very important that we speak out. And this is what we are doing, trying to speak to students to try to understand where this type of propaganda against Jews leads to.
Hatred is a disease, I think. There is not enough telling about what happened, that it can happen again and it can happen to anybody else. That hatred is a terrible thing. I have to find a way of trying to educate the youth. They should know what happened, and it can happen again if we allow it to happen again.
I'm 97, and until the virus, I was still flying across the country to speak. Replace hate with love and acceptance, because that's the only way this future generation will ever find peace.
And you know, the big pain that I have now, that the swastika has come to Canada. Don't these people understand what the swastika mean? 50,000 Canadians died to fight this evil. What they fought against is now being portrayed and spray painted all over. In schools, students are putting together tweets, the Sikh hiling. This is a terrible sign that it's not a Jewish problem. This is everybody's problem. And we can lose our freedom and our way of life if we don't stand up and do something. Everybody in this country that has given haven to a lot of people from many different countries, and we can lose this freedom. We need to reject this poison of swastikas and hatred, because if we don't, our way of life and our freedom could vanish into oblivion. So I plead to everybody, learn from the past.
If you're gonna continue hating, you're gonna destroy yourself. If I could put the hate away, so can you.
I learned one thing in Auschwitz, that you never, ever, ever give up. No matter what happens, you really don't know what you have inside you until you're really tested.
And you know, my mother left me a legacy. In the face of death, she still believed in the human race. So who am I to challenge it?
My name is Lexi Alter, and I am one of the 3 co-chairs of Generation Now, Friends of Simon Wiesenthal Center's New Young Professional Network. It is such an honor to be here with you tonight and to have the great pleasure of introducing the Honourable Irwin Cotler. Mr. Cotler is an internationally recognized scholar and human rights advocate. He is currently serving as Canada's Special Envoy on preserving Holocaust remembrance and combating anti-Semitism. We are so honored that he is joining us from Israel tonight to share his thoughts on International Holocaust Remembrance Day.
May I begin by commending Michael Levitt and the Wiesenthal Center and their partners, the Neuberger Holocaust Center, the Yad Vashem, the Azrieli Foundation, for organizing this timely and significant International Holocaust Remembrance Day commemoration. And a special welcome to 3 Holocaust survivors recently appointed to the Order of Canada: Max Eisen, Rose Lipszyc, and Eva Olsson, each and all of whom were commended, among other things, for their involvement and contribution to the teaching and learning about the Holocaust, and also to Rabbi Baruch Frydman-Kohl, also the recipient of an Order of Canada, for his interfaith leadership and his spiritual leadership all those years as head of Beth Tzedek Synagogue. So congratulations to each and all of you for making a better Canada and being the recipients of this most deserving award. We meet, as it happens, at an important moment of remembrance and reminder. on the 77th anniversary of the liberation of the death camp Auschwitz, the most brutal extermination camp of the 20th century, a laboratory for mass murder where there are no graves. And as we meet, it is an important moment of remembrance, reminder, bearing witness, and warning, of remembrance of horrors too terrible to be believed, but not too terrible to have happened, of a reminder of the Holocaust, as Elie Wiesel would repeat again and again, as a war against the Jews in which not all victims were Jews, but all Jews were targeted victims, of bearing witness to the mass murder of 6 million Jews, not as a matter of abstract statistics, but as we say on such moments of remembrance, that unto each person there is a name. Each person has an identity. Each person is a universe. And the warning that we need to learn and to act upon the universal lessons of the Holocaust for the prevention and combating of evil in our time. And as we witness, as we meet an international drumbeat of evil, accompanied by indifference and inaction of the international bystander community, the lessons of the Holocaust become even more compelling and relevant. These lessons include the danger of forgetting, which, as Elie Wiesel would remind us again and again, was like killing the victims a second time, and therefore the imperative of remembrance, of zachor, of the danger of anti-Semitism, the oldest and most enduring of hatreds symbolized by Auschwitz itself. 1.3 million people were deported to the death camp Auschwitz. 1.1 million of them were Jews. Let there be no mistake about it. Jews were murdered at Auschwitz because of anti-Semitism. But anti-Semitism did not die at Auschwitz, and it remains the bloodied canary in the mineshaft of global evil today. Of the dangers not only of Holocaust denial, but of Holocaust distortion, of the proliferation of Holocaust distortion in the social media, where the COVID pandemic is itself weaponized to accuse Jews, the Jewish people, Israel, of having manufactured the COVID virus, of being responsible for its spread, and even profiting from it. And where during the Hamas war, we found that in 1 week alone, there were 17,000 tweets that Hitler was right, that 84% of the anti-Semitic posts on social media are not removed, that TikTok platform, which targets 1.2 billion users between the ages of 16 and 25, increased 912% in its anti-Semitic content in 1 year alone, and so on. And so the responsibility, as the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance campaign has said, our responsibility collectively to protect the facts, of the dangers of state-sanctioned incitement to hate and to genocide. As the Supreme Court of Canada put it, the Holocaust did not begin in the gas chambers. It began with words, said the court. These are the catastrophic effects of racism. These are the chilling facts of history, of the dangers of silence in the face of evil, where anti-Semitism is toxic to democracy, and so our responsibility to speak up, to stand up, and to act, of the dangers of indifference and inaction in the face of mass atrocity and genocide. What makes the horrors of the Holocaust so unspeakable, and the genocides that followed, such as that of the Tutsis in Rwanda, are not only the horrors themselves. What makes the horrors of the Holocaust so unspeakable is that they were preventable. Nobody can say we did not know. The 80th anniversary of Wannsee on January 20th is yet another example of where we knew then of what was going to happen and was already happening. Of the dangers of la trahison d'éclair, the betrayal of the elites. Nuremberg crimes were the crimes of Nuremberg elites, of doctors and scientists, of judges and lawyers, of church leaders and journalists, of architects and engineers who designed even the Auschwitz death camp itself, of the dangers of impunity and the responsibility to bring remaining Nazi war criminals to justice, of the dangers of assaults on the most vulnerable amongst us. One of the first groups singled out for destruction were the Jewish disabled. And so to remember always the test of a just society is how does it treat its most vulnerable amongst us, and of the imperative of acting on the injunction of never again, which must not just be an idle slogan, but a call and an implementation of action. That which Raoul Wallenberg did, and in his immortal words, there was no other choice. And we remember also our first honorary citizen who demonstrated how one person, the compassion to care and the courage to act, can confront evil, prevail, and transform history. And may I close with a word to the Holocaust survivors amongst us. For you have endured the worst of inhumanity, and yet you somehow found in the resources of your own humanity the will to go on, the resilience to build family, to build relationships, to make enduring contributions to our country, Canada, for which we are all your beneficiaries. And so may this evening of Holocaust remembrance, may it be not only an act of remembrance, which it is, but may it be, and it must be, a remembrance to act on behalf of our common humanity. Thank you.
My name is Jordana Tepperman, and I'm the third co-chair from Friends of Simon Wiesenthal Center's Generation Now. It is my absolute privilege to introduce 6 very special Holocaust survivors who will be lighting 6 candles in honor of the 6 million Jews murdered during the Holocaust. I'm so honored to introduce my Zedi, Nate Leipciger, Andy Réti, Eva Meisels, Gershon Willinger, Pinchas Guder, and Leonard Vis, some of whom are joined by their families. It was so meaningful for me to be with my Zedi, Nate Leipciger, on the March of the Living twice, and I'm so honored to carry his story along to the next generation. Before we light candles, here are their thoughts on this International Holocaust Remembrance Day.
My name is Nate Leipciger. I was born in Poland in 1928.
My name is Andy Réti. I was born in 1942.
My name is Eva Meisels. I was born in Hungary, Budapest, in 1939.
My name is Gershon Willinger. I was born in Amsterdam, Holland in 1942.
My name is Pinchas Guder. I'm a Holocaust survivor. I was born in Poland in a city called Łódź.
My name is Leonard Vis. I was born in Amsterdam, the Netherlands, in 1930.
On this day of liberation of Auschwitz in 1945, we have to think about sending a message to the world that we must remember those who perished, but our job is not done.
With the rise of nationalism, populism, antisemitism, Islamophobia, I am very concerned about where we are going.
Whoever said that you don't have to know history is wrong. We are witnessing frightening developments, which is a repeat of the 1930s and the rise of fascism and Nazism.
I have experienced anti-Semitism. Any kind of hatred like that is ridiculous.
It is a terrible time for us, the survivors, to witness this rise in hatred again.
I'm very lucky that we ended up here after everything, and to be in a fantastically free country where we can tell and say whatever we feel like, practice the religion, and so on.
I came to this wonderful country where I have been living here for the last 30 odd years, and I am very happy that I have finished here. I really call this my home.
After we arrived in 1957 is really when my life started, and I became a Canadian citizen. I became a father, a grandfather. I grew up here. This is my home.
I think Canada is absolutely gorgeous. They gave me a chance to grow up. I've been as far north as Tuktoyaktuk and as far south as Pili Island. It's a gorgeous country.
The job now falls on the second and third generation, and we have to inspire you to carry on.
I think education for the children and doing speeches and talking to people about what has happened then. And I would like them to know that I do not want my past to be their future.
Think for yourself. You decide what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. You become an upstander instead of a bystander. You, my young friends, are the ones who are going to shape the future, but you cannot shape the future unless you knew your past.
Try to be open to different people, try to learn, because I think that ignorance is a creator of all kinds of hatreds. Be a light among the nations to other people, to all the other people around you. We need to create awareness and continue to create awareness and live in hope.
We have to be hopeful, because if we don't, we are in great trouble.
No religious discrimination, no racial discrimination, no xenophobia, no homophobia, no hate. Hate is pernicious. And I want to hand this over, this flame I want to hand over, and to spread the light of this flame and make things a much better world.
I'm lighting this candle in honor of our wonderful family.
I am lighting this candle to honor my mother, my father, my entire family, and 6 million brothers and sisters.
I'm lighting this candle in memory of my late husband, Leslie, and both his and my family who perished during the Holocaust.
I light this candle in honor of all the children who perished during the Holocaust, in honor of my parents and all the Jewish people who were annihilated during the Holocaust.
I'm lighting this candle for my sister who was murdered in Majdanek. Her name was Sabina. She was my twin sister, and I'm lighting this candle for her.
I'm lighting this candle to remember my murdered grandfather, Yehuda ben Uri, Louis de Pau.
International Holocaust Remembrance Day is significant because it is when the international community recognizes the enormity of what took place in Europe in the dark years of the Shoah. And it is understood particularly to be significant in these days when there is so much Holocaust denial throughout the world. The Kaddish, in memory of those who were killed. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'olma divra chirutei, v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon, uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael,
ba'agala u'vizman kariv, v'imeru amen. Yehei shmei rabba mevorach, leolam u'leolmei olmaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach, v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitale v'yitalal, shemei dekudisha, b'richu le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbchata v'nechemata, da'amiron bi'olma v'yimru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'yimeru amen.
Hello, I'm Fred Wax, Chairman of Friends of Simon Wiesenthal Center. I hope this year's commemoration of International Holocaust Remembrance Day was as meaningful for you as it was for me. As the son of Holocaust survivors, I found today's program particularly moving. On behalf of the entire team at Friends of Simon Wiesenthal Center, I want to express our appreciation to our co-presenters, Canadian Society for Yad Vashem, the Sarah and Chaim Neuberger Holocaust Education Center, and the Azrieli Foundation. Working with such highly respected organizations that play an important role in our community made this initiative so much more engaging. I would also like to thank the over 30 synagogues and Jewish organizations that were our community partners for this vital program. Finally, a big thank you to all of you who took the time to be with us this evening for this important commemoration. Your commitment to keeping the memory of the Holocaust alive through events like this and other programs is even more pivotal than ever. Keep well and stay healthy and safe.